My future brother-in-law publicly humiliated me at his engagement dinner, calling me weird to hide his own insecurity. Everyone laughed, unaware that my camera had captured his secret life in France last summer. One click would end his charade forever. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The sound of a spoon chiming against a crystal champagne flute usually signals a moment of joy, a prelude to well wishes and tearful congratulations. But that night, as the sharp ting-ting-ting cut through the ambient chatter of the upscale Italian restaurant, my stomach dropped like a stone in a well. I knew that sound. And more importantly, I knew the man holding the fork. Michael stood up, adjusting his tailored navy blazer with that practiced, slick confidence that everyone else seemed to mistake for charisma. He flashed a blindingly white smile at the room, about 30 of our closest friends and family members, before resting his gaze on my sister, Megan. She looked radiant, her blonde curls bouncing as she looked up at him with utter adoration, her hand resting on his forearm. "Thank you all for coming," Michael began, his voice booming slightly, projecting to the back of the private dining room without needing to shout. "Tonight is about love. It's about the future. It's about finding that one person who makes you want to be a better man." My mother, Patricia, dabbed at her eyes with a napkin, and my father, Mark, nodded approvingly, looking at Michael like the son he'd never had. I sat frozen, my hands gripping the linen tablecloth beneath the table, my knuckles turning white. I felt like an intruder in my own family, a sensation that had become increasingly familiar since Michael had entered our lives 2 years ago. "I found that in Megan," Michael continued, raising his glass higher. "I really did. I got the best girl in the world. She's kind, she's beautiful, and she puts up with my obsession with golf." A ripple of polite laughter went through the room. Then his eyes shifted. They slid past Megan, past my parents, and locked directly onto me. The warmth vanished from his expression, replaced by a glint of mockery that only I seemed to catch. It was a look I had seen a dozen times before in the hallway of my parents' house, across the table at Sunday brunch, always when no one else was watching. "And," he added, pausing for effect, "I even got a bonus package. The weirdest future sister-in-law a guy could ask for." The room went silent for a split second, and then the laughter came. It wasn't malicious from everyone. My parents chuckled nervously, assuming it was good-natured teasing, but Michael's friends roared. "I mean, seriously," Michael went on, leaning into the bit, emboldened by the reaction. "Vanessa is always off in the jungle somewhere, talking to monkeys, probably judging us all for drinking wine instead of rainwater. But hey, every family needs a black sheep to make the rest of us look normal, right?" He winked at me, a distinct, deliberate wink. "To Megan and me," he finished, downing his champagne. "To Megan and Michael," the room echoed. I raised my glass, my hand trembling so violently that the liquid sloshed over the rim and trickled down my fingers. It was sticky and cold. I forced the plastic smile onto my face, the one I had perfected over years of being told I was too intense or too solitary. "Weird." He called me weird. He framed me as the eccentric, the outsider, the one whose perceptions couldn't be trusted. It was a strategic strike. He was discrediting me before I had even opened my mouth. He was painting a caricature of me, the crazy artist's sister, so that if I ever spoke up, I would just sound like I was jealous or delusional. But as I watched him lean down and kiss my sister, wiping a smudge of lipstick from her cheek with a tenderness that made me want to scream, a different emotion overtook the humiliation. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't shame. It was a cold, hard rage. Because Michael thought he was safe. He thought that because I traveled for months at a time, because I preferred the company of wildlife to the pretenses of high society, that I was oblivious. He thought I was just the weird sister with a camera. He didn't know about the assignment in the French Riviera last July. He didn't know that my telephoto lens, designed to capture eagles in flight from a mile away, had captured something far more predatory on the balcony of a private villa in Nice. The betrayal wasn't just that he was lying to my sister. It was that he was standing there, holding her hand, building a life on a foundation of rot, and daring me to challenge him. The rest of the dinner was a blur of clinking silverware and suffocating noise. I sat there, feeling physically ill, king at my risotto, while relatives came up to congratulate me on gaining a brother. "He's such a charmer, isn't he, Ness?" My Aunt Linda gushed, leaning over my shoulder, her perfume overpowering the scent of garlic and basil. "You guys are going to have so much fun planning the wedding." "A real catch," I muttered, taking a long sip of water to wash down the bile rising in my throat. "1 in a million." "Oh, don't be so sour," Linda teased, tapping my shoulder. "I know he teased you, but that's just how men bond. It means he likes you." "He hates me," I thought, "and he fears me." I looked over at the head table. Michael was holding court, telling a story with animated gestures. Megan was looking at him as if he hung the moon and the stars. She looked so happy, so incredibly light, as if she were floating. Seeing her like that broke my heart into 1,000 jagged pieces. Megan and I had always been different. She was the sunlight, warm, open, easy to love. I was the shadow, quiet, watchful, complicated, but we were sisters. We were supposed to protect each other. If I told her the truth, that light in her eyes would die. I would be the one to extinguish it. But if I didn't tell her, I was letting her walk into a burning building. My phone buzzed in my clutch. I ignored it. I knew what was waiting for me at home. After what felt like an eternity, the dinner wound down. People began to filter out into the cool autumn air. My parents were waiting by the valet stand, beaming. "That went perfectly," my mother, Patricia, said, wrapping her shawl tighter around her shoulders. She looked at me, her smile faltering slightly. "Vanessa, try to smile a bit more, dear. You looked like you were at a funeral during the toast." Michael was just joking. "It wasn't a very funny joke, Mom," I said quietly. "Oh, stop being so sensitive," my father, Mark, chimed in, checking his watch. "He's trying to include you. You're always so distant. He's reaching out." He called me the weirdest sister-in-law in the world in front of 30 people. I countered, my voice steady but tight. "He said best girl regarding your sister," Dad said, dismissing my feelings with a wave of his hand. "Focus on the positive. We're finally getting this family settled. Don't rock the boat, Vanessa." Don't rock the boat, the mantra of my childhood. Just then, Michael and Megan walked out. Michael's arm was draped possessively over her shoulders. He spotted us and steered Megan over. "Great night, right?" Michael grinned, his cheeks flushed with wine. He looked at me, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Hey, Vanessa, no hard feelings about the speech, right? Just having a laugh." "Hilarious," I said, meeting his gaze. I didn't blink. "You really have a way with words, Michael. You're full of surprises." For a second, the mask slipped. He looked at me, really looked at me, trying to gauge if there was a double meaning in my words. He sensed something, a shift in the air pressure, but his arrogance quickly smoothed it over. "Glad you think so," he said, squeezing Megan's shoulder. "We're heading to the after-party at the hotel bar. You coming?" "No," I said instantly. "I have work to edit, early morning." "Suit yourself," he shrugged. "More fun for us." As they walked away toward his sleek black Audi, Megan turned back and waved, mouthing, "Love you." I waved back, my heart aching. As I watched the taillights of his car fade into the traffic, a cold wind whipped my hair across my face. I shivered, not from the cold, but from the burden of the truth I was carrying. I got into my own car, a battered SUV that had seen more dirt roads than paved ones. I sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, gripping the steering wheel. Michael thought he had won the night. He thought he had successfully labeled me, minimized me, and put me in a box where I couldn't hurt him. He thought his secrets were buried in the south of France, left behind in a rented villa with a woman who wasn't my sister. But he had forgotten one crucial thing. Photographers are patient hunters. We wait for hours, sometimes days, for the perfect shot. We observe the details that everyone else misses. And unlike memories, which can be twisted and gaslit away, a raw image file doesn't lie. He didn't know I had backed up the hard drive 3 times. To understand why this betrayal cut so deep, you have to understand Megan and me. We weren't just sisters, we were a survival unit. Our parents, Patricia and Mark, were good people on paper. They provided a nice house in the suburbs, paid for college, and showed up to graduations. But emotionally, they were as distant as the stars I liked to photograph. They were obsessed with appearances. Everything had to look right. The lawn had to be manicured, the grades had to be perfect, and the family had to appear cohesive. I was the glitch in their matrix. I was the tomboy who came home covered in mud, the teenager who spent Friday nights in the darkroom developing film instead of going to dances, the adult who chose a freelance career chasing storms and wildlife over a steady 9 to 5. Megan was the redemption. She was the one who followed the script. She became a graphic designer, creative but corporate. She dressed well. She dated the right boys. She made mom and dad proud in a way I never could. Because I loved her, I never resented her for it. In fact, I protected her. When she failed a class in high school, I hacked the portal and helped her talk to the teacher before dad found out. When her first boyfriend broke her heart, I was the one who drove over and threatened to key his car. I didn't, but the threat worked. I was the shield, and she was the flower. Then came Michael. He appeared about 2 years ago, seemingly out of nowhere. A real estate developer. A title that seemed to involve a lot of phone calls, expensive suits, and vague explanations of zoning meetings. From the moment he walked into our parents' living room, I didn't like him. It's hard to explain, but when you spend your life looking through a lens, you learn to read microexpressions. You see the flash of annoyance before the smile forms. You see the deadness in the eyes while the mouth laughs. Michael was all surface. He was charming, undoubtedly. He brought expensive scotch for dad and compliments for mom. He bought Megan jewelry that was just slightly too flashy, marking her as his territory. But with me, he was cold. I remember the first time we really spoke alone. It was about 3 months into their relationship. I was in the kitchen, editing photos on my laptop. He came in to get a beer. "So," he said, leaning against the counter, looking at my screen. "Taking pictures of birds again." "It's a red-tailed hawk," I said without looking up. "Cute," he said dismissively. "Does that actually pay the bills, or is Daddy subsidizing the artist lifestyle?" I slammed my laptop shut and looked at him. "I pay my own bills, Michael. Every single one. Does your development work actually build anything, or do you just move money around?" He stared at me, his eyes darkening. He took a step closer, invading my personal space just enough to be intimidating without being aggressive. "You're feisty," he said, his voice dropping an octave. "Megan said you were the difficult one. I can see she wasn't lying. You should be careful, Vanessa. People don't like difficult women." "And people don't like con artists," I shot back. He laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "I'm the best thing that ever happened to this family. Look at your parents. They love me. Megan worships me. You're just the odd noise in the background. Don't make me turn the volume down on you." That was the dynamic. In front of the family, he would make subtle jokes about my bohemian lifestyle, painting me as unstable or flighty. In private, he treated me with open contempt. He slowly isolated Megan. It was subtle at first. "Oh, let's not invite Vanessa to the movies, she probably has work. Let's go on vacation just the 2 of us, your sister would probably be bored." He drove a wedge between us, and because Megan was so in love, she let it happen. She started repeating his lines. "Vanessa, maybe you should try to be more social. Vanessa, Michael thinks you're a bit hostile." It drove me crazy, but I couldn't prove anything. He was technically perfect. He had money, he treated her well on the surface, and he had charmed my parents into submission. Until last summer. I had booked a 3-week assignment in France to photograph the coastal avian migration patterns near Nice. It was a dream job for a nature magazine. Michael had told the family he was going on a high-level networking retreat in Europe for 2 weeks. He was vague about the location. Somewhere near Monaco or Italy, lots of moving around. I never expected our paths to cross. The French Riviera is huge. The chances were astronomical. I was hiking along a cliffside path called the Nietzsche Path in Aix, looking for a specific type of falcon. I had my 600 lens mounted, scanning the balconies of the luxury villas that dotted the coastline below. I wasn't looking for people. I was looking for nesting spots in the architecture. I swung the lens across a sprawling white villa with an infinity pool. Through the viewfinder, the world was compressed and magnified. I saw a man on the balcony. He was wearing swim trunks, holding a glass of wine. He threw his head back and laughed. I froze. It was Michael. My heart hammered against my ribs. What are you doing here? I thought. Megan thinks you're in a conference center in Milan. Then the glass door behind him opened. A woman stepped out. She wasn't Megan. She was tall, brunette, and wearing nothing but a sheer sarong. She walked up to Michael, wrapped her arms around his neck, and kissed him deeply. He didn't pull away. He kissed her back, his hands roaming over her. He looked comfortable. He looked like a man who had been there 1,000 times. My finger, trained by years of instinct, pressed the shutter button. Click, 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 click. The shutter fired in rapid bursts, capturing every frame of the betrayal in high-resolution RAW format. I captured their faces. I captured the wine bottle. I captured the intimacy. I even zoomed in and captured the room number on the villa door behind them. I sat on that rocky cliff for an hour, shaking, watching them. They ate lunch on the terrace. They swam in the pool. It wasn't a one-night stand. It was a relationship. When I got back to my hotel room that night, I transferred the files to my laptop, then to 2 external hard drives, and then uploaded them to a cloud server. I had come home from that trip sick with the knowledge. But when I landed, Megan was in the middle of a crisis. She had been hospitalized for a severe allergic reaction. Michael had rushed back from his trip to be by her side, playing the hero. The timing wasn't right. I couldn't drop a nuclear bomb on her while she was in a hospital bed, so I waited. I watched. I let him play his part. But tonight, at the engagement dinner, watching him toast to his own deception, watching him mock me, the only person who knew the truth, something in me shifted. The waiting was over. The morning after the engagement dinner, I didn't wake up hungover from the wine. I woke up with the crystalline clarity that only comes after a night of restless, angry sleep. The humiliation of Michael's toast was still burning in my chest, a hot coal that refused to cool, but it had transformed from shame into fuel. I drove straight to my studio, a converted loft space in the downtown arts district. It was my sanctuary, smelling of developer chemicals, old coffee, and dust. This was where I had control. Here, light and shadow did exactly what I told them to do. I locked the heavy steel door behind me and booted up my main workstation. The dual 4K monitors hummed to life, casting a blue glow over the room. I reached into the fireproof safe under my desk and pulled out the ruggedized external hard drive labeled Backup 2023 Europe. My hands were steady as I plugged it in. I navigated the folders. France Nice as Nietzschepath Raw. There were hundreds of photos in the folder, landscapes, macro shots of succulents, high-speed captures of peregrine falcons diving. I scrolled past them all until I reached the timestamp, July 14th, 1:42 p.m. I double-clicked the first file. The image filled the screen. Even without editing, the clarity was brutal. My equipment was designed to count the feathers on a bird's wing from 300 yards away. Capturing 2 humans on a balcony was child's play. There he was, Michael. He looked younger in the photo, less guarded. He was laughing, his head thrown back, exposing the vulnerability of his throat. And there she was. I zoomed in, 200%, 400%. The pixels held together perfectly. I could see the sweat on his forehead. I could see the label on the wine bottle, a Chateau Margaux, vintage 2015. Expensive. Far more expensive than the wines he brought to my parents' house. I panned the image to the woman. She was beautiful, undeniable, older than Megan, perhaps in her late 30s. She had an air of sophisticated wealth about her, the kind of tan that takes months to perfect, not days. I zoomed in on her wrist. She was wearing a heavy gold bracelet, a distinct serpentine design with emerald eyes. I opened a browser window. I wasn't just a photographer, I was a researcher. You have to be when you're trying to track migratory patterns. I took a screenshot of the woman's face and ran it through a reverse image search engine, then cross-referenced the jewelry. Nothing immediate on the face, she probably wasn't a celebrity, but the bracelet got a hit. It was a custom piece from a boutique jeweler in Monte Carlo. I leaned back in my chair, tapping a pen against my lips. Michael had told Megan he was at a spiritual retreat and a networking conference in rural Italy. He claimed he had no cell service for days. Yet, the EXIF data on my photos, the digital fingerprint embedded in every image tagged the GPS coordinates precisely in Aix, France. The timestamp proved he was drinking wine on a balcony at the exact moment he had texted Megan claiming he was meditating in a yurt. I needed more than just cheating. Cheating was emotional destruction, but families like mine, obsessed with image, might be tempted to sweep it under the rug. Men make mistakes, my father might say. They can work through it, my mother would echo. I needed to prove that Michael wasn't just a cheater. I needed to prove he was a fraud. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in a year. Reynolds Investigations, a gruff voice answered. Jim, it's Vanessa, I said, the bird girl. Vanessa, long time. You in trouble or you need me to find a rare owl? I need a back. K-ground check. A deep one. Financials, property records, the works. I need to know if a Michael Sterling actually develops real estate or if he just plays one on TV. Send me the details, Jim said, his tone shifting to professional curiosity. What's the angle? He's marrying my sister, I said, staring at the face of the man who called me weird. And I think he's using her as a shield. On it, give me 48 hours. I hung up. I had the visuals. Now I was building the narrative. I spent the rest of the day organizing the photos into a digital timeline. I created a split-screen presentation. On the left, the text messages Michael sent Megan, which she had shown me back then, worried about his silence. On the right, the photos of what he was actually doing at that exact minute. Text, missing you so much, baby. It's lonely here, just thinking about our future. Photo, Michael receiving a massage from the woman by the pool. Text, going to sleep early, exhausted from all the hiking and workshops. Photo, Michael and the woman getting into a limousine in evening wear. It was a dossier of cruelty. By the time I finished, the sun had set and my studio was dark. I felt dirty just looking at it, but I also felt a surge of power. He had tried to weaponize my identity as the weird artist. He didn't realize that being an artist meant I saw everything. 2 days later, I initiated the first strategic strike. I invited Megan to lunch. I chose a place Michael hated, a small, organic cafe with mismatched furniture and vegan pastries. It was too hipster for him, which meant the chances of him ambushing us were low. Megan looked tired when she arrived. The engagement glow seemed to have dimmed slightly, replaced by the frantic energy of a bride-to-be who was already overwhelmed by logistics. Hey, Ness, she said, dropping her designer bag on the floor and collapsing into the chair opposite me. Thanks for dragging me out. Mom is driving me insane with the guest list. She wants to invite her entire bridge club. Mom just wants to show you off, I said, sliding a latte toward her. How is everything else? How's Michael? Megan smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She stirred her coffee vigorously. Oh, he's great. Busy, you know how it is. He's closing on some big development downtown. He's been really stressed. Stressed, I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Is the deal not going well? I don't know, she admitted, looking down. He doesn't like to talk about work with me. He says I wouldn't understand the complexities of commercial zoning. But he's been snapping a lot lately, and he's so protective of his phone. I felt a pang of sympathy. She knew. Deep down, somewhere in her gut, she knew something was wrong. But she was burying it under wedding magazines and floral arrangements. Megan, I started carefully, do you remember last summer, when he went to Europe? She looked up, surprised by the pivot. Yeah, the retreat, why? Did he ever tell you specifically where he stayed? Like, the name of the place? I don't think so, she frowned. He said it was near the border. Why are you asking? I was just going through my archives, I lied smoothly. I was editing my France photos from July, and I had this weird moment where I thought I saw someone who looked like him in Ez, on a balcony. Megan laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. Vanessa, stop. You know he was in Italy, and he was in a rural area. Ez is, like, super fancy, right? Michael was doing the rustic thing. Right, I said, watching her closely. It's just strange, because the dates aligned perfectly. And you know, Michael has expensive taste for a guy doing a rustic retreat. What are you trying to say? Her voice hardened. The defensive wall was going up. Are you trying to stir up drama because you're mad about the toast? I'm not mad about the toast, Megan. I'm worried about you. You said he's protective of his phone. You said he's stressed about money. Are you sure you know who you're marrying? He loves me, she snapped, attracting glances from nearby tables. God, Vanessa, why can't you just be happy for me? Why do you always have to find the darkness in everything? Michael was right. You are jealous. She stood up, grabbing her bag. I'm leaving. Don't call me until you can act like a supportive sister. She stormed out. I sat there watching her go. It hurt, but I had planted the seed. I had mentioned Ez. I had mentioned the dates. She would go home and ask him. She wouldn't be able to help herself. And that was exactly what I wanted. 3 hours later, my phone rang. It wasn't Megan, it was Michael. What game are you playing? He hissed. No greeting, no charm, just pure venom. I don't know what you mean, Michael, I said, putting the call on speaker and leaning back in my studio chair. Megan came home crying, asking me about France, asking me about Ez. You put that in he. Our head. I just asked a question, Michael. Did I strike a nerve? Listen to me, you freak, he growled. I don't know what you think you saw or what blurry picture you think you have of some guy who looks like me, but if you try to sabotage this wedding, I will ruin you. I will convince your parents you've had a mental break. I will make sure you're cut out of the will, cut out of the family, and left with nothing but your cameras. Are you threatening me because you're innocent or because you're guilty? I asked calmly. I'm warning you, he said, his voice dropping to a terrifyingly calm register. I have this family wrapped around my finger. Your father thinks I'm a genius. Your mother adores me. You are nothing to them compared to what I represent. Success, stability, grandchildren. Don't test me, Vanessa. Back off or I will bury you. He hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From adrenaline, he had just confirmed everything. He was scared. He knew I had something, even if he didn't know the extent of it. He had played his hand. He was relying on his emotional manipulation of my parents to protect him. He thought that was his ace in the hole. He didn't know I had just received an email notification from Jim, the private investigator. Subject, Michael Sterling report. You're going to want to sit down for this. I opened the PDF attachment from Jim. It was 20 pages long. I didn't just sit down, I poured myself a drink. The whiskey burned going down, but the information on the screen burned hotter. Michael Sterling wasn't a real estate developer. He was a consultant for a shell company registered in Delaware that had 0 assets. He didn't own the condo he lived in. It was leased in the name of a woman named Isabelle Dubois. Isabelle Dubois. I quickly cross-referenced the name with my research. The woman in the photos, the wealthy French national with the emerald bracelet. According to Jim's notes, Isabel was a 42-year-old widow of a shipping magnate. She split her time between Nice and New York. The lease on Michael's bachelor pad was paid by her. The lease on his Audi? Paid by her. His credit cards? Supplemental cards on her account. He wasn't just cheating on Megan. He was a kept man. He was a gigolo living off a wealthy, older woman while simultaneously setting up a respectable life with my sister. But the rabbit hole went deeper. The report showed that Michael was in significant debt, gambling debts, specifically. He owed nearly $80,000 to casinos in Atlantic City. Then I saw the kicker, a recent inquiry on my parents' credit. My heart stopped. I scrolled down. 2 weeks ago, Michael had helped my father refinance their home to free up capital for a joint investment. The paperwork was pending. Michael was listed as the broker. He was trying to drain my parents' equity. He wasn't just going to break Megan's heart. He was going to bankrupt my entire family to pay off his gambling debts before Isabel cut him off. The stakes had shifted violently. This wasn't just about a wedding anymore. It was about survival. I printed everything, the photos from France, the texts, the pie report, the property records showing Isabel's name, the loan application with my father's signature. I put it all in a thick, black portfolio. The next day, the atmosphere in the family group chat was toxic. Megan had left the chat. My mother sent me a long, guilt-tripping text. "I don't know what you said to your sister, but she is devastated. Michael is furious. We are having a family dinner on Friday to plan the wedding details. You need to come and apologize formally. Do not make a scene. Fix this, Vanessa." Friday, the wedding planning dinner. It was perfect. I spent the next 2 days in a state of cold, calculated preparation. I didn't respond to the texts. I didn't answer my phone when Dad called to yell at me. I let them think I was sulking. I let them think I was cowed by Michael's threat. I went to the bank and notarized an affidavit stating that the photos were unaltered. I made digital copies of the pie report and sent them to a lawyer friend with instructions to release them if anything happened to me. Michael spent those 2 days doing damage control. According to a mutual friend, he was love-bombing Megan, buying her flowers, taking her to expensive dinners, probably on Isabel's dime, and spinning a narrative that I was mentally unstable and jealous of their happiness. He was isolating her, tightening the noose. On Friday evening, I dressed for war. I didn't wear my usual cargo pants and flannel. I wore a sharp black blazer, tailored trousers, and heels. I pulled my hair back. I looked like the professional I was. I arrived at my parents' house precisely at 7:00 p.m. The familiar driveway felt like enemy territory. Michael's Audi was there. My parents' cars were there. I grabbed the black portfolio from the passenger seat. When I walked through the NT door, the house smelled of roast beef and tension. My mother was in the hallway, adjusting a vase of flowers. When she saw me, her lips thinned. "Vanessa," she said, her voice tight. "Thank you for coming. Please, for the love of God, just apologize to Michael so we can move on. Megan has been crying for 2 days." "Where are they?" I asked, my voice steady. "In the dining room. Michael is showing us the venue options." I walked past her. "Vanessa," she called out, sensing something wrong in my stride. I entered the dining room. Michael was standing at the head of the table, pointing at a brochure. My father was nodding, a glass of scotch in his hand. Megan was sitting next to him, looking pale and small. When I walked in, silence fell over the room like a heavy curtain. Michael looked up, a smug grin spreading across his face. He thought I was there to kneel. He thought he had won. "Well, look who decided to join the real world," Michael sneered. "Come to say you're sorry, Vanessa? Or are you going to tell us another story about monkeys and invisible men?" Megan looked at me, her eyes pleading. "Please, Ness, let's just have a nice dinner." I didn't sit down. I walked to the end of the table, opposite Michael. I placed the black portfolio on the polished wood surface. The sound it made, a heavy, decisive thud, echoed in the silence. I'm not here to apologize, I said, my voice projecting clearly, the same way I would command a set. And I'm not here to tell stories. I'm here to show you the pictures. Oh, for Christ's sake, my father groaned, slamming his hand on the table. Vanessa, enough. Michael told us about your little hallucination. You need help. Michael told you a lot of things, Dad, I said, looking directly at my father. Did he tell you that the investment you signed off on is being funneled into a shell company that doesn't exist? Did he tell you he owes 80 grand to a casino in Atlantic City? Michael's face went white. The smugness vanished instantly, replaced by a look of sheer, feral panic. Shut up, Michael barked, stepping forward. Mark, Patricia, she's lying. She's crazy. Get her out of here. Did he tell you, I continued, unzipping the portfolio, that the Audi in the driveway is leased by a woman named Isabelle Dubois, his lover? Lover, Megan whispered, her voice trembling. Vanessa, stop it, my mother screamed. I opened the portfolio. I didn't hand it to them. I splayed the photos out across the table like a royal flush. The vibrant blues of the French Riviera, the balcony, the wine, the kiss, the timestamps. July 14th, I said, pointing to the date. When he was in the yurt in Italy, he was in Aix, France with Isabelle, and he wasn't just visiting, he lives with her. Michael lunged for the photos. Don't look at them. But it was too late. My father was staring at the photo of Michael and the woman in the limousine. My mother was staring at the copy of the bank loan application with the fraudulent routing number circled in red. And Megan was staring at the photo of Michael kissing another woman, her hand covering her mouth, her world collapsing in real time. This, I said, looking Michael dead in the eye, is what a weird sister-in-law does. She checks the background. The silence that followed my declaration was heavy, suffocating, and absolute. It was the kind of silence that precedes a natural disaster, the vacuum before the hurricane hits. Michael stood frozen, his hand halfway extended toward the table, his eyes darting frantically between the photographs and the faces of my family. For the first time since I had known him, the slick, polished veneer was gone. In its place was the raw, sweaty desperation of a cornered animal. This is ridiculous, Michael stammered, his voice cracking. He pointed a shaking finger at the photos. These are fake, it's Photoshop. You know what technology is like these days. Vanessa is a photographer. She edits things for a living. She put my face on someone else's body. He turned to Megan, grabbing her shoulders. Megan, baby, look at me. You know me. You know I love you. Your sister has been out to get me since day one. She's sick. She created these to tear us apart because she's jealous that you're happy and she's alone. Megan stood still, her body rigid as a board. She didn't look at him. Her eyes were glued to the table, specifically to a close-up shot of the woman's hand resting on Michael's chest, the emerald bracelet glinting in the Mediterranean sun. Isabelle Dubois, Megan whispered, her voice trembling. I saw that name on your phone once, a notification. You told me she was a potential investor for the downtown project. She is, Michael insisted, sweat now beading on his upper lip. She's a client, a very wealthy client. Sometimes you have to entertain clients, but that's not me in the photo. That's a deep fake. And the loan application. My father asked. His voice was terrifyingly quiet. Dad wasn't looking at the photos of the affair. He was holding the document I had pulled from the portfolio, the refinancing agreement for the house. He was reading the fine print, his face draining of color. Mark, listen to me, Michael started, shifting his focus to the money. That's just preliminary paperwork. I was going to run it by you. It's a standard procedure to secure the best rates. It has my signature on it, Dad interrupted, looking up. His eyes were cold, hard flint. And I didn't sign this. You forged my signature, Michael. I was acting as your proxy, to save time. You tried to pull $200,000 of equity out of my home, Dad said, his voice rising to a roar. Into an account for Sterling Consulting? I read the report Vanessa brought. That account has a zero balance and is registered to a P.O. box. I was trying to help you, Michael yelled, his face turning an ugly shade of red. I was going to double your money. You people don't understand how high finance works. We understand theft, my mother shrieked. She had finally snapped out of her shock. She walked over to the table and picked up the photo of Michael and Isabel kissing. She looked at it, then at Michael, with pure disgust. You ate at our table, you slept under our roof, and you were laughing at us the whole time. Because your jokes, Michael exploded, the mask didn't just slip, it shattered. He backed away from the table, sneering at all of us. Look at you, desperate little suburbanites trying to feel important. Oh, Michael is such a catch. You practically threw your daughter at me. It was so easy. He turned his venom on Megan. And you, God, you are so boring. Do you know how exhausting it is to pretend to be interested in your little graphic design stories? Isabel is a woman of the world. She has class. She has money. You were just the safe option. The little wifey to cook dinner while I lived my real life. Megan slowly lifted her head. Tears were streaming down her face, ruining her makeup, but her expression wasn't one of weakness anymore. It was one of awakening. I might be boring, Megan said, her voice shaking but gaining strength with every word. And I might be naive, but I am not a thief, and I am not a liar. She reached for her left hand. With a violent tug, she pulled off the engagement ring. It was a platinum band with a large diamond, a diamond I now suspected was paid for by Isabel or bought on credit he never intended to pay. Get out, Megan said. What? Michael laughed, a cruel barking sound. You're kicking me out? This is my wedding too. I have deposits down. You don't have a dime, I interjected, stepping forward to stand beside my sister. The pie checked your accounts, Michael. You're overdrawn, you have gambling debts. You were using my father's equity to pay off the sharks so Isabel wouldn't find out you were bleeding her dry too. Michael glared at me. If looks could kill, I would have dropped dead on the dining room carpet. You ruined everything, you freak. You bitter, lonely little spy. Get out of my house, my father commanded, stepping between Michael and us. Dad was 60 years old, but in that moment, he looked like a linebacker. He pointed to the door. If you are not gone in 30 seconds, I am calling the police and reporting the forgery. And believe me, Michael, I have the lawyers to make sure you rot for it. Michael looked at Dad, then at the phone in Dad's hand. He calculated the odds and realized he had no moves left. Fine, he spat, straightening his jacket. Keep your miserable little life. Isabel is worth 10 of you. He turned and marched toward the front door. We heard it slam so hard the windows rattled in their frames. Then, the roar of the Audi engine and the screech of tires as he sped away into the night. The silence rushed back into the room, but this time, it wasn't heavy. It was the silence of a battlefield after the shooting stops. My mother collapsed into a chair, sobbing into her hands. Dad stood staring at the door, his chest heaving. Megan stood frozen for a moment longer. Then, she turned to me. Her eyes were red, swollen, and filled with a pain so deep it made my own chest ache. You knew, she whispered, since the dinner. I knew since July, I said softly, but I needed proof. I needed to make sure he couldn't lie his way out of it. I needed to save Mom and Dad, too. Megan looked at the photos scattered on the table, the evidence of my weird hobby, the proof of my distant nature. She looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in years. Then she crumbled. She fell into my arms, burying her face in my shoulder, wailing. I held her tight, stroking her hair, just like I used to when we were kids and the thunder scared her. I've got you, I whispered into her hair. He can't hurt you anymore. I've got you. The next few weeks were a blur of legal and emotional triage. My father didn't hesitate. The next morning, he was at the bank with the police report and the affidavit regarding the forged signature. Because we caught it before the funds were dispersed, the damage was contained, but the investigation triggered a cascade of scrutiny on Michael. It turned out Sterling Consulting had defrauded 3 other families in the state. We weren't special, we were just the latest mark. The police issued a warrant for his arrest for fraud and forgery. But I had one more loose end to tie up. 2 days after the blow-up, I sat in my studio. I had scanned the entire PI report, the photos from France, and a copy of the police report regarding the forgery. I composed an email. The recipient was an address I had found on the website of Isabelle Dubois' philanthropic foundation. Subject, Michael Sterling, the truth about his business trips. Dear Ms. Dubois, I believe you are currently supporting a man named Michael Sterling. He likely tells you he is a real estate developer. Last week, he was engaged to marry my sister while simultaneously trying to embezzle $200,000 from my parents. Attached are photographs taken in Ez on July 14th, confirming his presence with you, alongside timelines of his lies to my family. Also attached is the police report regarding his financial fraud. He is not who he says he is. I thought you should know before he tries to use your assets to pay his legal fees. Sincerely, Vanessa. I hit send. I never got a reply from Isabelle. I didn't need one. But a week later, I heard through the grapevine Michael's former friends were very talkative now that he was a pariah, that the Audi had been repossessed and Michael had been evicted from the luxury condo. Isabelle had cut the cord. Michael was arrested a month later in a motel outside of Philadelphia. He was trying to skip town. He's currently awaiting trial, and with the mountain of evidence against him, plea deals aren't looking likely. But the real story wasn't about him, it was about us. The Sunday after Michael's arrest, I went to my parents' house for dinner. It was just the 4 of us. No fiancé, no pretenses. The atmosphere was different. The tension that had defined my relationship with my parents for decades, the feeling that I was the disappointment, the outsider, was gone. We were sitting on the patio, drinking iced tea. Megan was thinner, and she had cut her hair into a sharp bob, shedding the curls Michael had liked. She looked sadder but stronger. Vanessa, my father said, clearing his throat. He set his glass down. I wanted to say something. I braced myself, out of habit, for a critique. I'm sorry, he said. He looked me in the eye. I'm sorry I didn't listen to you. I'm sorry I called you difficult. You saw what we couldn't see. You saved this family from financial ruin, and you saved your sister from a nightmare. My mother reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Her eyes were wet. We were so focused on how things looked, she admitted, her voice soft. We wanted the perfect wedding so badly that we ignored the red flags. You were the only one who cared enough to look at the reality. I just did what I do, I shrugged, feeling a lump form in my throat. I observe. Well, Megan said, a small, genuine smile touching her lips. I'm glad you're weird. I'm glad you go to the jungle and sit in bushes for days. Because if you were normal like us, I'd be married to a monster right now. She raised her glass, to the weird sister. Dad raised his glass, to Vanessa. Mom joined in. I raised my glass, feeling a warmth spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the summer heat. I still travel. I still disappear into the wilderness for weeks at a time to photograph wolves or storms. I am still the solitary observer, the one who prefers the edge of the room to the center. But the dynamic has changed. When I come home now, I'm not the black sheep, I'm the watchdog. Michael was right about one thing in his toast. He did have the weirdest sister-in-law. He just didn't realize that weird isn't an insult. It means different. It means perceptive. It means seeing the things that are hidden in the shadows. And if you're going to live a life of lies, the last thing you want is a photographer in the family. Because we always get the shot.